Dana and I, so many. You can see a theme to a lot of the programming here, where a lot of this is like just started. Got introduced to Dana. She was talking about just these great applications of AI and the agency tech stack. I'm like, I think a lot of people would like to hear about that. I sure would. And so Paul's smiling because it sounds really familiar. And Dana's like, I'd love to. I know MK also has a lot to say about this. Can I bring a friend on? And I was like, more experts on this, the merrier. So Dana, MK, I'll have you properly introduce yourselves and get into things, and just really excited for the conversation. For those who haven't joined before, these are very conversational, so much more salon format. Feel free to chime in with questions. You can use the chat to the extent you want. If you just blurt something out, like on video or off, great, right?
Are you talking to me when you say that?
David, you're not allowed to blurt out anything. You need special permission, okay?
Blurt access?
The blurting is disabled for Mr. Cutler, but for everyone else, please blurt. So Dana, MK, welcome.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David, for having us. So I'm Dana, and I'm pointing down, but MK can wave also. And I figured before we each do our own proper intros, maybe we can blurt in the chat to start. And we thought it would be great just for everyone to go in there and introduce themselves to us, so we kind of get a vibe for who's in the room. So if you're open to just adding your name in the chat, where you work, and MK, I forgot you had a good prompt. What was your favorite AI tool?
Oh yeah. What people are, most excited about working with right now.
Yep.
Just you want to just drop where everyone's coming from.
Yeah. If you want to just drop that in, that'll give us a sense who's here. And that way, if we, we can either tailor or, give you an hour of irrelevant stuff either way. But yeah, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. I'm not either. No one's chatting or I can't see it. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Leo. Bill's 3, cool. Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that while people are chiming in, but we'll do proper introductions of ourselves. So I'm Dana Hork, and I'm the CEO of Beers with Friends. We are a brand agency with a whole lot of entrepreneurial energy, and I will give you, I'll give you what Beers with Friends is in a second, but just to give you a little bit about my background, I'm a longtime marketer. So I was an early hire. I started my career in financial services, actually selling municipal bonds. But after business school, started my sort of modern day career at jet.com. I was an early hire in the marketing department there, ran a variety of teams. And then eventually when we were sold to Walmart, I went over and led social media for Walmart, responsible for all of our national handles, our 5,000 local pages, all of our community management. So have a deep history in kind of brand and content. And then most recently, I was the SVP of marketing at Wonder, which is an ambitious food tech business, building a super food app to democratize access to the world's best food. And yeah, after a brief stint last year in the world of Web3, I hosted a podcast called Web 2.5. So if you can't see it, I have my fancy podcast microphone here, and really became interested in the use cases for blockchain and Web3. And as the world of sort of innovative technology has expanded to not just include blockchain in the conversation, but all use cases of AI and the like, I fancy myself as a student and deeply curious about what the use cases are for AI. So have been playing around with different things and building Beers with Friends in the agency. And so that was the impetus for coming here today. And MK, and just I'll tell you a little bit about our agency in a second, but the punchline you need to know for the context of MK and I is that we staff all of our projects with a roster of experts and fractional experts. And so I met MK, who's an expert at Beers with Friends. And not only does she have a bunch of amazing skills in the creative realm, she also happens to also be an AI student / expert. So MK can introduce herself too.
Cool. Hey, everyone. Yep, I'm MK. Been recently now working with Dana, which has been fantastic. I come from a background in advertising. I spent years working both brand side and agencies, kind of helping brands, develop their creative visions. From a kind of traditional perspective, I worked in, production and design. But the past few years, I actually wound up moving over into kind of Web3 and innovative technologies and really starting to incorporate that into a lot of the work that I did with brands and helping brands understand how to even approach these things. So many of these technologies moving at the speed of light, everyone's got FOMO, they want to use it, they want to be part of it. But it takes a minute just to even figure out, what is this? How does this work for my brand? And what are the best spaces to use it to really start communicating better with audiences? And so that's what I've really been helping, people do the past few years. And just making sure to integrate that kind of into both my, daily practice as a creative and how I, set up my workflows, and then helping, brands understand how to use that both in their internal workflows and then potentially for, more actual consumer facing products and, final product there.
Awesome. And David, as a co-host, I can also see that people are joining the waiting room, but I'll let you approve or deny whoever's there, but just flagging that for you.
Yeah, sure thing. You don't see any more right now, do you? Oh, wait, there are.
I do see a few
thank you.
more. Yes,
I guess it was
saw
too
pile
far
up.
down. Oh, wow, look at this. So I appreciate that. I guess I was paying a little too much attention to all the great conversation and following the member intro. So if you are just joining, feel free to chime in and join the chat, and also use the AI companion to hear what you missed. So.
Cool. So yeah, exactly. So, if I had a brand, throughout my career, it probably would have been slides, or it didn't happen. And so I feel like if I show up to a meeting without slides, something just feels wrong. So MK and I had to put a few things together. So, we already talked about who we are, just so you get a sense of what Beers with Friends is, so you understand the context through which we're going to share how we're using AI. We are, as I mentioned before, a brand agency with entrepreneurial energy. So we help ambitious clients bring agility, expertise, and out-of-the-box creativity to the work that they do. And what makes us different is how we work. So we work in sprints. We break every engagement down into 5 days. We assemble super teams, right? So every engagement that we work on is a team of hand-picked experts that are the right group of folks for whatever project you're trying to tackle. We work on only one client at a time, so you get our full focus and attention. And then we really specialize in sort of remarkable, makeable thinking. So how do we do out of the box thinking, but in a box? And so the reason this is all relevant is that agility and efficiency and is really important to our model. We need to work quickly. We need to build remarkable ideas, and we need to do it, in record time. And so what AI unlocks for us is the ability to deliver on our brand promise. And so what we wanted to talk about today was 2 ways that we're using it. One is sort of AI as an unlocker for creativity. And then the second is really AI as an unlocker for productivity, right? So the work itself, how do we make the work better by using AI? And then the process and the agency operations, how do we use AI to improve our operations? So that's the focus for today. So I'm going to turn it over to MK, one of our Beers with Friends experts, to talk about using AI for creativity.
Cool. Yeah. So I have, really dove into AI now over the past few years to integrate into my, day-to-day practice in developing my creative work. And what I have really found is that, I'm not always using it for that finished product, but what I'm really using it for is to make my creative process a lot more efficient, a lot less stressful. And a big thing I'm using it for is to really get over sometimes that creative block. When I start on a new project with a client, we get that brief, we start, kind of ideating and brainstorming. And often, you start looking at that blank sheet of paper. And I've worked, for over 10 years in this industry. And sometimes I wonder, when I'm staring at that blank sheet of paper, have I ever had a creative thought in my entire life? It's that moment of creative block. Doesn't matter how good you are at what you do. I know everyone's got it. And what I have found is that, something like a ChatGPT has now really helped me break that down, because with it, I can ask the stupid questions. I can get the, bland ideas out of the way first. So what I'll do is I'll go into a ChatGPT and I'll, start really broad, really high level with a vague description of kind of the project that I'm working on, what I'm, the vague description of the client. I don't like to put specifics, just as, always a kind of conservative in these things, never put specifics into any of these programs. You don't really know where it's going. So I'm always careful about that for, the protection of my clients. But starting with this of, putting these vague descriptions in and getting ChatGPT to help kind of get the juices flowing and get the ideas coming out. Because what I've found is that, the ideas that come out, they're probably not groundbreaking. It's probably a lot of things that have happened before, but it creates these really great jumping off points. It reminds me of all these little things that, oh, these have been done. Now we can make it bigger. So it really has now helped kind of make that first start of the beginning of my process in creative thinking a lot more efficient, because I don't have to sit there and, throw 100 bad ideas at the table first just to start really ideating on that good idea. I can kind of get ChatGPT to do it for me and start building that out. And then I'll take that and start to, formulate them my own ideas. So, then I move into the next phase of things where we get into, using AI to really help in the iterating process. So once I've kind of defined, maybe the platform idea that I want to use for this campaign or project, I need to visualize it. You need to bring this to a client. And often that, used to require just like spending hours sifting through, Adobe Stock and Unsplash and Google Images and all these things, trying to pull together these mood boards and this visual representation of what you wanted. And I still do a lot of that. But what's amazing is now I can use, like a Midjourney and start to kind of, pull together a more specific look and iterate on it really quickly to get this in front of my clients and start really aligning on those visuals. So while, I wouldn't use this as like my final product for them, what I can use this is to really help them see where the final product could go and where, we can really get to with that. And when
I just wanted to ask one question on this, and I was like a little curious, like seeing all this together in a way I hadn't quite yet. It is like, do you start by trying to get like the mood, like the bottom row, or do you start with the product and then like reverse engineer the mood board or like the themes from it?
It would depend on kind of the final product. So one key thing that I find with using AI for creativity is you have to know a little bit where you want to end up. To get the most out of it, you have to have kind of a direction that you want to go in. And so for these, when I started on this, I knew, okay, well, my pretend client is a sneaker brand. Midjourney is obviously trained on a lot of, common use things. So it does tend to, we immediately see Nike in here. But, when I started doing this, I was like, okay, I want something that's really futuristic. So I started, playing around with those kind of prompts. And I basically did it, I would say, kind of parallel pathed. So I worked on some images, trying to get it to give me like a futuristic sneaker in these color palettes, using some neon with a dramatic lighting. But then I also worked on simultaneously this, like give me more of just this feeling. So remove the sneaker and show me what a futuristic world looks like. Because I think when you're presenting these projects to clients to kind of get them on board, they both need to see kind of their product sometimes, but they also want to see, what is the world that you're building? So I tend to parallel path them when I'm, kind of coming up with these images and using them. And again, like I said, it also depends on what the end product that you're looking for is for that image and what you're trying to sell in. Does that kind of answer that for you?
Love it. Yeah. Because the process is so great, especially, like I'm one of those people that maybe some others can relate to who isn't a creative in that sense. And it's now like we can do things like this that enhance our capability, but like, we're not coming from that like creative director perspective. Yeah. So it's like, it's not like I suddenly have that skill set, and it's so helpful to hear like, how does someone with that skill set really approach this in a much more, methodical way.
Yeah. And one thing that's really nice too, is when using this, one kind of the key items that I use in my prompts are, I set my scene, my location, I set my aesthetic, and I set my medium. So it's like, I'm setting that I want a sneaker. That's my object. I want an aesthetic of, kind of futurism. And then my medium is, photography. So that is, allows me to kind of create this very specific, distinct thing that I can bring and, show to a client and align on. And why this is really effective now is because instead, previously I would just have to convey that maybe verbally to a client before I got started. And we might not envision the same things. We might use the same words, but we might envision two different things. So being able to iterate really quickly and bring kind of what I mean when I use those words to someone to say, hey, is this actually what you're visualizing too, is really helpful.
Great. And
I saw someone just mark in here, just want to respond really quick.
exactly, yeah.
To get logos and like text correct. So one downside at the moment is that things like Midjourney, DALL-E, I've not seen, they're all terrible with words and text. It's not quite built in. I'm sure at some point we will get there. Now, these images are all from Midjourney straight out the box. But like I said, Midjourney is trained on images, and there is a huge database of Nike sneaker images. So when you go in and like look for a sneaker, it has enough to reference to actually get pretty close that it actually looks like this is like a real, like Nike logo on it, or it like almost has the text right. But if you're looking for something that is not kind of culturally known like that, it's going to be pretty probably like far off. And that's where you then want to take it into your next step of, kind of refinement of that. And then, so I can touch base on this a little, where what I'm most excited about now is to actually, I think that's a great segue into this, of some of these like really powerhouse creative tools are really starting to integrate AI. So you have Adobe starting to integrate AI into things like Photoshop and Illustrator, which actually starts allowing you to better refine your AI creativity and content. So this image we have in the center here is one that I just generated off of Midjourney, brought it in. But now with Photoshop, what used to take me, maybe a half an hour, I can do in 30 seconds, because I can just select, widen my screen, select that empty area, and ask Photoshop to, interpret the image and extend my background for me. Or I'm able to go in and, select out my background and say, you know what? I know I said initially to do this with like a color blocked background and very, very modern feeling, but now I want it to feel outside. I want to, put a blue sky behind it. I want to put some grass behind it. I want to add in these extra bubbles and objects. And to me, this is the part that's going to be really exciting and powerful, because this will actually allow you to take, sometimes the slightly generic images that are created on an AI app like a Midjourney or DALL-E, and start to personalize them. And this is also where you're going to start having more opportunity to, like people said, bring in actually your brand elements, and in a much more just very cohesive way. So, and I see, yeah, the pen tool is still a great friend, but I will say it's really incredible what we're seeing in, again, these powerhouse tools like Adobe, with using AI to have smart selections, to be able to just completely swap out backgrounds. I mean, I spent several years of my career actually working as a photo retoucher. And the stuff that I did on this image using those AI tools would be like an entire day's project for me sometimes. And, I did this in 5 minutes the other day with just a few text prompts. And so, it's a big game changer in that sense, in terms of the creative process and being able to, like I said, iterate quickly. Now, in these images, I still wouldn't use most of this as a final product. There's a lot of detail that's often missing, but if you are trying to get your idea across quickly, this is your best friend for doing that. Does anyone have any questions about any of that? Or otherwise, I'm going to pass back to Dana to kind of go into some of the more business side workflow where we're using AI.
Yeah. So it's, so thanks, MK. I think, so obviously this is a view into how we, use AI to make better work. And then there's the business side of it, which is how do we both market the work that we make and then create process and operations around it. I don't know that any of the tools that we've integrated into the process are so, groundbreaking, but I think maybe giving you a window into how we're thinking about it and our approach is something that, you can borrow into your own businesses. So, when you think about doing this, now we're going to make a big leap and assume that, the product is made and out into the world. I'm not a huge self-promotion person. I actually don't love going on LinkedIn, which is why something like this is so useful. So I actually tested the other day. I was like, all right, let's go back into ChatGPT. Let's introduce myself to ChatGPT through the lens of LinkedIn. And I gave it a shot and I said, let me see if I can write my LinkedIn profile, right? Because that's all about marketing myself and marketing the agency. Let's see how that can do for me. I actually was pretty unimpressed with what came back out. I thought maybe ChatGPT could write a better bio for me. It didn't. I think the one that we wrote, that I wrote myself and with my co-founder turned out better. But then where it was useful is now that it had the context on me and who I was, it was pretty helpful in giving me those thought starters and jump off points from a marketing perspective on what type of content we might create. So getting my profile back out and then giving it a prompt, can you create 10 LinkedIn post topics that I should speak about, right? Gave me things like the power of 5-day ideation sprints. Like here are some success stories that we've had within the agency, or spotlight on fractional experts. Maybe I wouldn't have thought to say, oh, we could talk, talk about MK and all the great things, that she's helping us with on our projects. Like that's a great idea, right? My favorite was number 5, Minnesota nice in business. I put in there that I'm from Minnesota and it thought that was worthy of a post. And then lastly, what I thought it did a terrible job of is I still don't like writing swear words. And so I put that we don't just work differently. We give a asterisk HIT, to which it told me I should talk about the impact of giving a hit, which doesn't make much sense at all. So, as MK mentioned, none of this stuff might be final product, but it does give me nice thought starters and jumping off points, and thinking about the marketing of the work and how we talk about it to the outside world. And then just from a business operations perspective, there's really 3 phases that I'm focused on. We're in our early days. We're not even a year in, but laying the foundation for things that scale is really important. And doing that means creating sort of a connected ecosystem of data and process so that as you scale with more clients, more data, more inputs, you've got everything connected to each other and you're able to use it more efficiently and effectively. So the first piece is just like capturing things, right? So here's 3 bad screenshots of like some of the tools in the tool stack. Obviously, all of these have their own AI brought into it. So whether you're using Notion, which is in the top right, we're using Google Drive, which I screenshotted here. We're using Fireflies to capture meeting notes. Like this is the first most essential thing is, right, just making sure you're picking a tool stack that has AI, at least within it, so you can get stuff out. But also, and I'll talk about this in a second, enables you to get connected to each other. So in case it's helpful, just for folks out there, like I mentioned, we're on Google Docs or Google Drive, we're on Notion. We use Fireflies for meeting notes. We're using a CRM system called Copper, which I like and integrates well into Gmail. We're using Loom. Like we've chosen tools that are sort of the preferred choice of the tech savvy entrepreneur community, right? And that was intentional, right? We didn't pick like a HubSpot. We didn't pick sort of these, I hope no one hears from HubSpot, but we didn't pick dinosaur tools that I felt like were going to be late to the game. We picked tools that would enable us to capture everything well and that we knew we're going to innovate at the pace that we were going to innovate. The second, right, is the extracting thing piece. So just to give you a summary, I tried to block out all the client specific work, but for Notion, for example, we put client briefs in there. I have all the meeting notes in there. We've got every project has its own page. And so then I actually found the AI summary sort of useful. So for example, we're building like an insulated cooler pouch for a product, and it actually created a pretty nice summary based on all the inputs that it was looking in. So they're creating a custom cooler pouch for, XYZ brand. It fits snugly and keeps it cool. The budget is this. They want to make this many units. Like it really did a pretty nice job in pulling out the pieces. And that enabled me to work with more efficiency as we bring experts onto the project, go back out to clients, create marketing materials. It helped me scale my own time and being able to articulate clearly what we were doing, what was going on. And then the last thing, as I mentioned, connecting things. I am very hands-on. I have, done my fair share of Squarespace websites, and now fancy myself as a Zapier expert, right? at the very minimal level. But even the AI tools built into things like Zapier really help someone, if you're hands-on keyboard and trying to do stuff yourself, building Zaps to really connect your tools and their AI generated kind of prompt generator where you can write in, in regular words, and it helps you sort of find the right starting and jumping off point for building connectivity between tools, I thought was useful. So this is some of the ways that we're connecting things together. So that's really the ways we're using in productivity. Because I'm sharing my screen, I can't see questions coming in. So if anybody wants to shout them out, or we wrote this awesome prompt for discussion. So that's the end of our prepared remarks, and we're happy, David, to take this either to open questions or dig in deeper. But that's what we got.
I got a question.
Sure, I'll stop sharing so I can
think
see.
The tool stuff as Dave set up is awesome. I mean, the tools you're using, we're all kind of just struggling. I think there will be a regular, tool set or beers with tool set or whatever you want to call it. So I have a question specifically about when you're saying you're using Notion for briefs and account information. You said a project page for every project. How do you connect that to your CRM, which I guess is Copper? Is that a Zap, or is it just constantly both the same thing?
Yeah, so it's great. And it's funny because a lot of what I play around with isn't AI specific. It's what I would call like systems thinking specific. So I didn't know how much of it to bring into this conversation because some of it is good old just like thinking through systems, but I'm happy to share our systems and tell you how we've done it. So I use Copper as the CRM. It's I chose it because it's got nice Gmail integrations. And I use that as the central source of truth for people and companies. And then I use a bunch of the fields there for, defining, is this a prospect? Is this an expert in our network? Like, who is this contact and what stage of the company? And I manage our pipeline largely there. Notion, I had to build a Zap to connect. I started fully on Notion and brought Copper in later because I found Notion not to be great with two things: project management and CRM. And so I moved out of fully Notion. I brought on Copper as the CRM, and then I brought on Asana as project management. And then the connectivity that I built between those is I send, and this is not perfect, this is like the back of the bar napkin way, but I send people and companies from Copper to Notion. And that way, when I'm in Notion, I use that for meeting notes, project details, sort of like an intranet, if you will. But the people and the companies are sunk between the two. So if I was taking notes on this meeting, and if I had a meeting with David Berkowitz, like he's in my CRM, he was sent to Notion. I can say, who is this meeting with? Drop down David Berkowitz, and I do it there. This is just how I'm sure there are a million ways to optimize. And then again, I'm using Asana for project management. What else is relevant? We've been using Tally for forms, but we might move over to Typeform. And I found sometimes when tools don't talk to each other through Zapier, using a Google Sheet as a midpoint is a good workaround. For example, I discovered in Tally that you can't actually send multi-select data from Tally into where was I sending it? Oh, into Copper. And so I had to like hop skip it through a Google Sheet and add some, add some semicolons or whatever I had to add, and then I could port it in. So, it's all just trial and error for what works for you.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Love this. Jay, your hand's raised.
Yeah, I try to be polite. It's one of those things my mother and grandmother beat into me at a young age. I mean, taught me at a young age. So love the model, love what you guys are doing. Something I wish we could have pulled off in one of my more recent agencies. But my question is, what do you really want these AI tools to do that maybe they can't do right now? Where's that gap? So if you could kind of add like one or two custom tools to say, this is one of the things that I could really get their help with to accelerate the things that we're doing. I think it would be interesting to get your perspective on that.
You want to start? MK, do you have a quick answer? I need to think.
I would say Mine is less about new tools I want developed, and it's more just about the finessing of them.
Hmm.
I think one difficult thing is that, you know, AI is only as good as the models that it's built off of.
Yep.
And one thing I've noticed in especially a lot of the image generators is they tend to skew really heavily in certain artistic directions. And so I think that can be kind of a, you know, a frustrating point. And so I'd love to see, you know, as this continues to expand, how do we actually expand in also an ethical way, the content that is building these models so that you can actually, you know, go in and get a little more specific with your work. And things like, you know, I love what I'm seeing. Again, I'm really honestly mostly excited about some of the major creative tools that I already have used and have used for so long, integrating this stuff.
Yep.
So having seen, you know, Photoshop started with like the generative AI for imagery, but they recently released this new one for creating vectors in Illustrator. And I'm mostly just excited to see more of that, more of doing, you know, getting rid of like the grunt work. You know, like I know someone mentioned using the pen tool for creative work where you used to have to carefully select and, you know, pull everything out. And I did that for years. I was phenomenal at it. But it's exhausting and it's time consuming. And so now the more tools that come in that take over that little, you know, kind of time consuming stuff and allow me to focus bigger picture are the things that I'm most excited about.
Now, if we can only get our clients to get bigger picture to follow that, right?
Well,
Sorry.
and that's the
Was
best
was
part.
that out loud? I thought I was on mute when I said that.
But that is also actually the best part, I think, now in terms of working with clients is that, you know, what used to take several days to kind of create only for the client to say, sorry, this is the wrong direction. Actually, wait, we changed our minds. Now I can iterate this like much, much quicker so that when we can corral them into, you know, picking a direction and sticking with it, you know, we can focus our real energy on making that, you know, 10 times better versus like, you know, wasting weeks on 100 different mood boards and mock-ups that, you know, they're just going to keep saying, oh, actually, maybe try this. No, try this.
Yeah, I like it when you force them into 5 days, and in which basically means you're forcing them into decisions, and that's awesome.
Yeah, but I think it's, I mean, a couple of things that I would add. One, you know, what I think is a big takeaway from this conversation, even what you said is right. People think AI can't replace human expertise, knowing how to use the tools, and also creating structures. Like AI never would have solved the problem that, you know, clients go off and don't, you know, respond midway through an engagement, or agencies are in a black box for 16 weeks. Like that requires human ingenuity to say, okay, actually a better process would solve for this. And then what are the enablers to do that? But then the second thing I wanted to say, I saw Randy's point in there about the cobbling together of the tools. That would be my wish, is that there is more consolidation, because I think, you know, for any business, small or large, right, the undoing of tools and systems later on in the life of a company where you've got to migrate and move to things is really onerous. And while it makes you feel awesome to have this like bespoke tool stack and you found the coolest this and the coolest that, if those tools don't make it, right, your data is sitting in all of these disparate places, and that is going to be a problem in the future. And so I always, you know, that's why my stack is not so interesting, because I just don't, I worry about the longevity of some of these small players, right? Where being first might not improve your chance of being there in 5 years. And so I sort of bet on the big players that they're going to figure it out, because they have to. And, you know, that having to redo this whole thing, you know, even in a year is time not well spent.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we have someone else who was also raised very well, and no offense to Mr. Cutler, but
Take it as a
Chris.
feature.
Thanks. My mom is a retired educator, so raising my hand has been a part of my life since birth, for sure. I'm curious. So one of the things we do quarterly, in part to combat the cobbling together and the ramp time to get utility out of things, is we as a team come together and talk about who's using what, why, and how. And one of the things that we're really fixated on is what problems could we be solving differently entirely, in a large kind of open-ended way, because thinking of it through the lens of what our clients are struggling with relative to the way we interact with them and deliver results, is at least for us, useful. And it's helped us to stop using certain tools like Notion, for example. We were struggling with its utility on certain levels. We were trying to get it to do things it wasn't good at, right? So I'm just curious if you guys have a similar methodology for trying to extract the best utility out of tools, and B, look differently at process to solve the problem different. Because I think one of the problems that I know I suffer from is I'm trying to use a hammer to hammer in a nail when what I should be thinking about is how to attach two things. And I miss the boat on that sometimes. So I'm just curious how you guys think about that.
Yeah. I mean, I can answer it for us. And it drives, so my co-founder's not on this call, but he's our creative director. And so we're wired differently. And so he jokes with me that every day I'm sending him 3 new tools to try. And he's like, wait, because I love absorbing all of this stuff. I mean, the way that we've solved for it is what I just shared, which is we're using things and we're always parallel pathing and testing something else. So a real example of that would be, we started with Google Meet, right? And we're like, oh, it's free. It's included with Google. And then we discovered, all the pain points, and we're like, geez, the slide sharing thing, and not everyone, and 1 in 5 meetings, someone's like, I haven't been on Google Meet in a long time, and so then we're like, great, let's go to Zoom. And we've been using that. And then we said, well, hey, we want whiteboarding, and we're doing these sort of collab sessions, and the App Store and Zoom was sort of strange. Now we're testing something called Butter. I actually really like it so far. Check it out. It allows you to have more of a branded experience, right? So there's a weight room with cool music. You can put logos, up all around. And so for our internal workshops and brainstorms, like the vibes are great. But then slide sharing is a challenge because you can't, you share the slides, but you can't see the reaction. So like, I think it's a mix of parallel pathing other things and seeing if, you want to move over in the process, and also just being okay with 90%, or paying for all the SaaS tools, which is, my Achilles heel.
Yeah. And just to kind of add on to that, it's like, I approach a lot of these tools with kind of this, like, in my process, this like 90-10 mentality, where like, I'm always looking for new tools to make things easier, but I'm also not expecting any tool to like magically solve all my problems. All these tools came out for AI and everyone's like, oh my God, there's never going to be a designer or a writer again because they can all do it. And then if you really work with them, they can't. They can do great things, but not everything. And so, for me, the process has been, spending just enough time to test everything out, to get to know it, to really understand what it's really good at and what it's not good at, and then see where that integrates in my process, so that I'm not trying to shoehorn some technology just because it's, the big star of the moment into my process. I'm looking at it and saying, for me, like ChatGPT or what, any of these like writing tools, they don't come up with the most innovative, creative ideas. But like I said, they do come up with all of the like 100 ideas that I just need to like get out on paper and get through my brain, so that I can trash them and actually have a jumping off point for that next big idea. And so I think that's kind of, how I approach all of these is, to like dedicate, 10% of your working time to testing them all out, seeing what works best. And then you can find those little moments where the right tool integrates into the right, process.
I think one thing that is just jumping to my mind, seeing some of the comments in the chats and thinking about this also just in terms of what this can unlock. Something else I just wanted to bring up is that, now I'm a longtime marketer, so I've been on the client side for most of my career, and being on the other side, what's fascinating is that, clients are just like me, and they have different learning styles, right? Some are visual, some are auditory, right? Some are experiential. And what these tools enable you to do also is demonstrate with more agility dimensions of an idea. So if, for example, you're writing concept statements in copy with a big headline, but now you're more able to quickly bring a visual to the table for clients that process information in a visual way, then they might be able to get more excited, understand what you're trying to communicate in a way that speaks to them. And so I do think a lot more about learning styles on the client side, because, you know, when I was there, I would always say, like, I can't fall in love with an idea unless I see it, right? And so some of these tools enable you to bring different dimensions to life in a way that allows you more chance of success in, you know, in selling an idea.
Great. Jeff, come on up.
Hey guys, thanks so much for the time it takes to put these things together. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences and strength and hope and all that. And a lot of really insightful comments and a lot of stuff that we're working on as well. I'm curious to see, are you using any kind of a process measurement to determine efficacy of a tool? We're starting to really focus in on that, whether or not something's actually productive or not, or if we're just kind of creative geeks amused with things, because, you know, that's really easy on Midjourney, right? And then also, I really thought it was funny that there's an AI called Butter. I'm wondering if there's one called Biscuits soon, or Cake, or anything like that, because I'll take baked goods. Thanks. Bye.
I'd actually love to learn from you about what you're doing. I mean, the answer is no. You know, it's more, the answer for me is no. I don't know about you, MK, but I'd love to learn from you, Jeff, on what you're all testing.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, with writers, we're using Claude a lot more than we're using GPT now, or Jasper or Writer, just because we found it's a lot easier for our summarization purposes and we get time to product faster. We're starting to measure the amount of time it takes to actually prompt and get the result that we're looking for out of it, and to also train the engine. I call them engines, based on the brief that we put in there. I call it a brief. I know it's kind of silly, but, you know, we take our creative brief, throw it in there. Here's the tone. Here's what we're looking for. Here's the amount of versions we want on this email campaign. Here's the messaging, et cetera, et cetera. How quickly can we get to something that's workable that we can edit and use? Whether it's like one iteration or maybe 8 iterations like we would see with 3.5. And so those are the things that we're looking at. But we also want to, we're starting to build product. And that's what my company wants to do, is build product to integrate this stuff into the dinosaur CRMs. And, you know, one of the things that's going to make it worthwhile, we hope, for people, is that it actually measures how useful it is for marketers and how successful it is on the actual campaign front. So I think there's one thing to measure the time savings. And I think the next level that we want to get into, which we're not right now, to be fully clear, but we want to get into, like, how does this perform compared to a human generated campaign? How's this compared to its other companion AIs that offer the same thing? Which AI is better? Which one generates the most outcome and most results? And I think once we get into the actual efficacy percentages, we'll be able to really nail down, like, hey, this type of AI is going to probably get you a couple extra points. And that matters a lot when you're dealing with click-throughs and that kind of thing. So that's just what we're thinking and working towards.
Yeah, that's great. I saw a tool yesterday. I'm going to pull it up and drop it in the chat. That was much more in the performance marketing realm. That was an AI enabled sort of building marketing more quickly sequencing different marketing campaigns and measuring impact. So I think, hold on, I'm just looking through it was called digitalfirst.ai. So just something to check out. I came across it yesterday myself. So.
That's great. Well, what other questions do we have the next 5-10 minutes we're together? So, okay, so yeah, I mean, this just also, I mean, it's more than some other conversations I've had, it just really makes me appreciate people who are so great in their domains and like what AI can't replace. And it's like, I think we all know that, but sometimes we just feel this more than others. And you know, like, with MK and Dana, like both of you come more from like a world I know, but with very different experiences and skill sets. And it's like the stuff that even if I can present some of the stuff that's like in that good enough territory for clients, like I know it's not going to be great, and I know I don't know exactly what I'm looking for too, right? And so people who know what good enough is, like that goes a very, very long way.
Well, I think one way, I mean, for folks that want to play around with AI tools for creative outputs, I mean, something that I've done is used it for creative outputs with a lower bar, which is in my personal life. So for example, have written like a limerick for my kids when giving them a gift, right? Or I should have used it yesterday. My daughter's not home. I'm whispering like it matters, but the tooth fairy came yesterday. I should have thought to write it for the note, for the tooth fairy note. So hopefully I didn't ruin it for anyone, if anyone here still believes in the tooth fairy. But using it on family life and kids and, all of that stuff is sort of a low stakes way to play around with creative output, to then, get your sea legs under you and then use it in your business life.
Well, I actually did one other specific question, because there was a mention of Google Tools, the hub, and Bard always gets a bad rap whenever there's a comparison of like hallucinations or accuracy compared to other LLMs. But also like Google's doing a lot more of incorporating AI enhancements into its whole workplace suite, including Google Docs and spreadsheets, things like that. Like, are there any of those that you've tried and at least like, if not love?
MK, do you have anything?
I haven't used those specifically very much, but this kind of goes back to what I've been saying a bunch, is I've been using the things that are part of now the Adobe suite. And I'll tell you that like their image generation, not as good as some of the external standalone programs, but I am still using it a lot and staying familiar with it, because I do think a lot of it will catch up, and that integration is going to be key. I think we're going to see a big switch in the next year where a lot of these standalone products start to fall by the wayside as some of the big power players actually really develop their technology behind it. Because I think that integration is what people are really actually going to gravitate towards, and being able to use it in products they know day to day versus having to like learn how to go on Discord and figure out how to, write prompts in weird ways. So I think, I haven't used the Google stuff specifically as much, but I think it's worth it keeping an eye on all of those things, because I do think they're going to get a lot more powerful, and that integration is going to be the key.
Nice. And it's helpful, and totally with you there. It's like some of it's like almost a little, it's like bittersweet, right? Like the rich get richer piece of it, but it's also like, I mean,
maybe the rich get richer, but the small get exits, and we can hope for that.
And then there's a question from Thomas on Microsoft Copilot. Use that.
I left Microsoft. I don't use Microsoft in general. I mean, I use Doc Word for Mac, but generally anything Microsoft, the vibes feel strange when there's like a Teams call. So I don't use.
I will say, as OpenAI has had some scaling issues and uptime issues, when like I needed to create something, I'm like, oh wait, I could just go on the Bing tool and get DALL-E 3 that way. I was so glad they integrated that.
Right. But that's funny, right? Like it kind of, all of this makes me feel that, there are no new stories to write, right? There's a market leader, and then there's the challenger, and like this one has problems. And so this one is like, finally, the AI tool that works, that has uptime. Like everyone's going to compete on the same dimensions that they've all competed on before. So there's nothing new. We're just, watching it all happen in real time. And nothing is forever. I mean, I think about, just bring up an anecdote that no one's going to understand, which is that movie, You've Got Mail, right? And remember, right? Like she's got the corner bookshop and then Fox Books comes in. But like what happens, 10 years after the movie, then there's Amazon, right? Like, which, they need a part 2, right? So like whatever it is that someone's going to disrupt it and someone else comes in. And so, maybe we're seeing the Fox Books era of, AI, but like, I don't know, someone else is going to come along and be like, psh. So never ends.
Love this. Got a few more comments coming in. Any last questions while we wrap? And appreciate Dana and MK also being in the community. So if you have some follow-ups, and also for you both, feel free to share best way people can reach you, follow up with anything. Yeah, I mean, this is a ton of fun. And like some others I mentioned, appreciate you actually putting things on paper and giving us some stuff to actually visualize and bounce off of, because like, when Paul did that last week and you do it this way, it just makes it a lot more concrete for I think all of us.
Yeah. No, and thank you. I think, the best thing about knowing something, a little bit of something, is knowing how much you don't know. And so, we're students here with all of you. And so we're excited to be part of the community, learn from you all, whether in Slack or on future sessions. So thanks for giving us that opportunity.
Can you tell us what a good client is for you so we can keep you in mind? What are you looking for?
Oh, you're the best. Anybody you'd want to have a beer with. No,
well, that's everyone in this call right now.
Right. No, look, we our superpowers are on the brand side. And so anyone that needs to crush their next brand milestone. So they could be an early brand trying to figure out like what's our brand strategy, our brand positioning, our organic social presence, all the way up to like, we need a big brand campaign. We need to tell our story in the world better. We're really great on, like I said, brand, social content, and just, anyone. I think we found value at every stage of the spectrum. So whether it's earlier stage companies trying to punch above their weight and tap into like seasoned senior experts, marketers, creatives to get done what they need to get done without paying, exorbitant fees at an agency. And then for later, large companies, Fortune 100 type scale, those companies find value in us for agility. We're very complementary to their agency of record. We just help them get more done and move quickly and add some new outside fresh perspective and creativity. So, but I appreciate the question.
Are there any niches that you're finding that you're good at, you like? I mean, is it personal stuff? I mean, I picked some sustainability clients just because we got to save the planet. So now that's turned into a bit of a thing for me. So what about you?
I think that we haven't defined it by sector. I'd say everything has been consumer facing brands, and where there's really a desire to build an emotional connection with consumers, right? Brand love. And also I am actively looking for a really boring company that wants to become unboring. So if anybody, like, we'll take an unboring company that wants to like not be boring, like trucking, dirt removal. Like, I don't know, like I love a project like that. But for most brands, it's fun, cool brands that are trying to connect with culture, connect with consumer, build emotional connections, and just do big breakthrough, cool, fun stuff.
Great. Well, David, thanks for very useful question to close it out, and appreciate good to know. Thanks, Jay, for pointing them to C2. Terrific folks there. So yeah, good to see all of you. Next week is not surprisingly a bye week for us, so we'll regroup in 2 weeks, and we're virtual, and we'll actually also have the in-person event for those in New York. So just make sure you're following the AMG emails and Slacks and everything for all the updates there. But yeah, really, Dana, MK, this is just terrific. I could be here for really the rest of the day just listening to all this. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.